So this principle is limited government, which basically means that the government cannot do whatever it wants. And this has a long history in the United States. Obviously, it's a constitutional principle, but it goes back further than that. We came out of a monarchy. After the revolution, the founders were very, very much worried that there would be another strong government that would turn into a tyrannical dictatorship. And so when they made our first government, it wasn't even our federal government that we have today, it was the Articles of Confederation, right? And this took almost all power away from the government and gave it to the states. Of course, they realized this wasn't a good way to maintain a stable government, so in the Constitutional Convention, we created a stronger central government. But all the while, our founders were wary of forming a government with too much power. So if you look at the Constitution itself, there's all kinds of things that we might think are kind of funny today. Like one article prohibits Congress from establishing titles of nobility, so they can't knight anybody. Which, doesn't sound too harmful to us today, but it was a real concern. They did not want a government that could have too much power. And even after the Constitution was written, some people still felt like the government was being given too much power. These would be our anti-federalists. And so we tacked on 10 amendments immediately to the Constitution that we now call the Bill of Rights, including things like Amendment number 2, the right to bear arms. So our founders were worried that, the government would come in and take away weapons, and weapons are an important part of forming militias that are used for the defense of the people. So they enshrined this right to bear arms in the Constitution, which is still very important today. But this has a long history in the United States, and it's not just about being afraid of the government generally. It's about being afraid of specific people within the government abusing their power. So if you know the story of Richard Nixon and Watergate, Richard Nixon was embroiled in this huge scandal and essentially engaged in a cover-up operation and then lied about it. And so Richard Nixon would have been impeached by Congress, but he was kind of forced to resign first. He didn't have to resign, but he knew the writing was on the wall and that his best interest would be to resign. So no matter who you are, from a student to Mr. Clark to the President of the United States, you must follow the same laws as anybody else. This is an extremely important concept in our government, in our democracy. And so if the government is reaching over what it should do, it's up to citizens to speak out against it. Now, one of the more famous citizens who believes himself to have done this would be this guy, Edward Snowden. So he was a contractor for the NSA who was entrusted with a lot of top national security secrets and revealed them by basically stealing thousands of government documents and releasing them to the press. And some of the documents that he released outlined ways in which the government was spying on U.S. citizens without their knowledge. And so limited government is not one of those guaranteed principles, but it's ones that we have to fight for all the time. And whether you think that Snowden was a traitor or a patriot by releasing this information, the point is that we know that our government doesn't always respect its own limits. And so it's very important to keep an eye on that. And that is the concept of limited government. Thanks.